Welcome to the Colorado Lacrosse News Podcast, where we go beyond the scoreboard and into the people, programs, and culture shaping the game.
Today, we are joined by Madison McPherson, founder of MadMac Athletic Consulting. Madison played Division I lacrosse at Johns Hopkins and Stanford, and now she works with athletes and families throughout the college recruiting process. There have been several major changes in the NCAA lacrosse families really need to understand. Today, we're going to break down the new division age-based eligibility rules, the new contact times for Division I lacrosse, and most importantly, we're going to talk about what these changes actually mean for high school players and what families should be doing now. Madison, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Let's jump into it. Let's jump into your path and
Nice.
your journey a little bit. So you started at Johns Hopkins and then ended up at Stanford. Let's hear about how that all happened.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Maryland. I'm from Catonsville, which is a bit outside of Baltimore City, but I grew up there. And then in 8th grade, I played club lacrosse for Skywalker's great club program, owe a lot to them. So I think that's where a lot of my really great lacrosse training came from. But in 8th grade, my dad got a new job with the Foreign Service. So my entire family and I moved to Manila, Philippines, and we spent the first 2 years in Southeast Asia, which was incredible. And then after my sophomore year of high school, I moved to Zambia, which is located in Southern Africa. And we did my junior and senior year of high school there. So I actually graduated, did my entire high school experience internationally, which made recruiting very, very interesting. But yeah, and then sophomore year, which technically was late at the time because I was recruited before the rule changes. I was recruited when girls were getting looked at in 7th, 8th, 9th grade and pretty much committing in 8th grade and 9th grade. And then 10th grade was considered like, oh, you're a little bit behind, which is just crazy to me now. But in the winter time of my sophomore year, I committed to Hopkins. And it was funny because my older sister, Trinity, was committed to another school at the time, but ended up decommitting from that school and committing to Hopkins, which is funny because I think we see some of that with sisters now, but it was actually unrelated, but I'm super glad that we ended up getting to play together for 2 years at Hopkins and super grateful to that coaching staff for that. So,
And then you got to compete against each other down the road.
Yes. And people think that was fun. It was mostly painful. It was slivers of fun, but mostly it was hard because we have such a great relationship and you don't want to end each other's careers, but also you're fighting for your own team. You're fighting for your own career. So it was very tough, but good for the soul.
That's great. All right. So I have to go into it since you had a kind of a non-traditional journey being international, and there's not a lot of lacrosse in a lot of the places that you were.
Yes.
So were you coming back to the States in the summers to play with Skywalkers? So that was pretty much your only lacrosse experience was club.
Yes. So I never played high school for a high school team, but came back every summer. We would come back, end of May, play through the last tournament, which is usually sometime in July. And then we would go back to school. And it's bad, but we didn't honestly play a ton of lacrosse when we were overseas. We would pick up the stick from time to time, which do not recommend for girls. You should definitely be playing with your stick more than we were playing with our sticks. But what I do think is that we played so many other sports and we were competing against players all over the world, playing these super cool sports. We were playing touch rugby. We were swimming all the time. We were playing underwater rugby in PE class, like just crazy stuff like that. And I think it just developed us as athletes. So we, when I stepped on the field at Hopkins, it was really a matter of refining some of those stick skills, some lacrosse IQ, but the athleticism was there. And that was really what I needed to be successful.
Oh, that's really cool.
It was cool.
It sounds like you played almost everything. Underwater rugby, is that similar to like water polo?
No, it's crazy. Literally, so with the underwater rugby, and obviously this was so many years ago. I don't know if the rules are if they're legit rules, but you can only pass the ball underwater. So you had to go down, hold your breath, pass, and if you came up, that's when players could tackle you, tag you. And of course, I was in a PE class, it was co-ed. So we were playing against these guys tackling us. I mean, you had to be a strong swimmer. So it was really interesting, but good for the lung capacity, good for strength.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a new sport for me.
Yeah.
Sounds very intense. I know how dangerous a water polo could be. My grandfather was a big water polo player, and he lost his front teeth playing. And so I can only imagine underwater rugby.
It was insane. It was insane.
Yeah. All right. How did you come to start MadMac Athletic Consulting? Where did that all come from?
So essentially, as most young people, at some point in your life, when you're working for corporate America or you're working for corporations, you're just kind of like, is this really what I want to do? And I think so. I loved my job. I was working at a children's hospital, super interesting, working in public health, and I think does a ton of good for the community. But I definitely wanted to be my own boss. So I honestly got MadMac up and running pretty quickly. I had the idea late March, and then by end of April, I had set up my LLC bank account, website, built it myself, built all the programs. I was already talking to stakeholders and trying to get in touch with club programs, which helps because I was already well connected, but just being able to kind of snowball it and talk to people, parents. And I really based it off of the questions that I was getting throughout my entire college career. Parents were coming up to me and asking, how can we replicate this? How can my daughter achieve this level of academic and athletic success? And I was giving out the advice for free. And so after college, I was kind of like, I think I should be charging for some of this advice. It's really great. And then developing it more so that it was something that parents felt was worth their money. But yeah, that's kind of how it came to be. I just wanted to be my own boss, and I saw a need, saw a niche, and went with it.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's interesting how many parents really just need that information, and how few sources there are for some parents, because for a lot of them, I think lacrosse is a newer sport.
It is.
It's something, I mean, you growing up in Maryland or starting your career in Maryland, it was everywhere. Coming from the East Coast myself, it was part of our everyday life. It was everywhere. But especially in places like Colorado and California and some of these other places, it's still growing, and that awareness is still growing. These aren't second generation players. These are first generation players that are going into these processes. Yeah. So that's super cool that you can be a resource for those individuals. All right, let's jump into, because we'll go into the mire, as they say. The NCAA has made many changes over the years.
Many.
This one was rumored for quite a while, and finally came into play with new eligibility rules. And the clock starting automatically now on players. So let's dive into that. Everybody's calling it the 5 for 5. NCAA has come out and said the 5 for 5 is not an accurate description, but let's go in. Let's explain it in simple terms for parents that are trying to understand, what is the 5 for 5 rule.
So, under previous rules, athletes had 4 years of eligibility, so you get 4 seasons to compete, and you can use them within a 5-year window. But when that window starts, how the nuances with red shirts and things like that, it all was kind of jumbled in there. There was a lot of leeway that ended up allowing players to stay on for these long periods of time. Now it's 5 years. So every athlete, except for the seniors this past year, obviously, but every athlete gets 5 years of eligibility to complete in 5 seasons. So once you start and enroll full-time in school, the clock starts, or if you're an athlete that chooses to enroll later, or maybe you're older than your typical age group, it starts when you turn 19. So that essentially allows players to be able to compete for 5 seasons. If you wanted to do a master's program, that's a 1-year master's. You could do it and potentially be staying on financial aid and scholarship and things like that. So yeah, essentially everyone gets a 5th year now, to put it super simply.
So what does that mean for players that are currently in college that may have taken a red shirt? Does that count as a year for eligibility for them then?
So this is where I'm still trying to figure out everything 100%. From what I understand is if you already had your redshirt year and you also get this 5th year of eligibility. So this is where it's one of those, could end up being a little loophole for those players that already had it before. But, there's only 3 years worth of those players. It's the people that were juniors, the sophomores, and the freshmen. So after they're kind of through, then it's going to be this new clock. So I believe that you get both, but I think that's going to honestly depend on what coaches are saying to their athletes. Do they have room on their rosters for them? Do they have space? What is each school and conference going to kind of look like? Yeah, but that's my understanding thus far.
Let's jump into that. You highlighted something that I think is really important, even for the this year's graduating class, the 27s. Rosters are changing because these players can now choose if they're doing the 5 or the old rules, because there's that weird kind of in between phase where current seniors could in theory say, oh, I'm staying and playing another year.
Yeah.
I know there's a handful of players that may have committed to go to like the WLL or to play someplace else, so they can't. Right. Mm-hmm. But what is that going to do to rosters for these 2027? Are things going to change for them?
I do think so. This is one of the biggest changes I think that we're going to see NCAA wise. I think that it's going to make it, there could be cool things. There will be hard things. I think it'll make it tougher for those younger girls to get on the field. I think the transfer portal is going to explode, and people are going to be, it's already exploding, but people are going to continue to make decisions to go to a different program that they love the master's program there. They're going to continue to make decisions where, oh, I didn't enjoy my experience here, but I could have 4 more years at a great other institution. I think scholarship wise, coaches are going to have to disseminate more money across more players. I think there's going to be tough conversations also that coaches will have to have with older players. Just because everyone gets the option doesn't mean that coaches will want everybody to come back. You recruit a new crop, to kind of continue to better your program. And I think coaches and players will have to make hard decisions and have hard conversations talking about, is there room for me here? Is there going to be aid for me here? Am I going to see time, or are you looking to the next class that's coming in? So I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. I look at, especially on the men's side, historically, so many players reclass multiple times. And I know, in my generation, I hate to go back, but I remember kids at prep school that would repeat their sophomore year, repeat their junior year. And by the time they made it to college, they were 21-year-old
They're 20,
men. And they are going D1 to play.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that is no longer a thing, but it is so common in sports still. And you see people talking about the reclass all the time on social media.
Oh my gosh,
Those players are, in theory, screwed because their eligibility starts at 19 now.
Right. And it's so hard, especially on the men's side, because like you said, I think this heavily leans toward them and what was happening. Most girls, for the most part, were entering at 18, 19 max if their birthday was before the cutoff. But I do think in the long run, obviously I can't speak to the men's side. I don't know what it's like over there, but I think in the long run, it will be beneficial in terms of evening the playing field and allowing players that are of the same age to be in the same class and competing on a somewhat level playing field. It was hard I watched, especially at Hopkins, there were men's players where, I mean, they were literally 22, freshmen. And I was like, that's when I'm graduating. I'm a senior and I'm 22. So I just felt so bad for the younger guys who would come in and they actually were 18. I'm like, yeah, the development is totally different. And I think it will also affect some of that. I mean, I don't know necessarily lacrosse wise how much we would see of this, but, in some of those other sports where people take a year to go play professionally even, or like, all the things that people do where they go take a year and train with some team. And it's just kind of like, oh, and then you enter college. It's interesting. I know you can't play professional and then do college, but yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see how that goes. Do you think it'll affect certain positions more than others? I look at like goalies or face-off specialists, people that are really specialized in those areas who are historically highly recruited.
Yeah.
If you're really good you're a really good goalie, if you're really good at draw controls, you are high on a lot of lists.
Yeah.
But is that going to limit those type of positions?
I think for girls, I don't think it'll necessarily be a huge skew. I really don't. For men's, I have no idea what their recruiting looks like. I'm sure that it would influence in some way for those positions that there's less players on the field for. Yeah, I could see that. But for girls, I feel like it'll be fine for the most part. I don't see it being a crazy shift. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think this will create more, like a little bit more pressure for players to actually find a program where they can contribute early? So you might not want to start if you're looking at like a high level D1, but with these new rules, are you looking at possibly a lower tier D1? Or possibly that D2, D3?
Yeah. Oh, man. I hate to say it, but I do think it will create some pressure. I think girls and parents will just need to do their absolute best to remember that the process is about the best fit for you, that your journey is your own, and making sure that you're really finding the place that's going to be suitable for you emotionally, mentally, physically, academically, so that even if you didn't get to play in those younger years, you were really happy with your college experience. And I try to tell my girls that anyways, because regardless of this rule or not, you should be picking a school where if you didn't get to literally, if you didn't step on the field very much, you loved the school, you loved the team, you loved your experience. So I do think, yes, it will create some pressure, especially for like the 2028s right now, this recruiting class that's in their sophomore summer, as they're the first recruiting class that's going to be affected by this sort of rule. So I think it's definitely going to cause some pressure, and it'll just make parents think and athletes think a little bit more about what's the right fit for them.
What should those classes be doing now? Those 27s, 28s, 29s, what do they need to change now?
I would say what I've been telling my girls is really take a look at that program. And I know it's hard to know what you want to do in your life when you're literally a sophomore in high school, but really thinking about longevity. Is this a place where there is a master's program that I would want to do if I did use a fifth year? Is this a place where academically spreading my course load out over 5 years makes a lot of sense? I think they also need to be having very clear and direct conversations when they do go on official visits. So for the 28th come September 1st, you need to ask the questions to the coaches and respectfully, and do so with, tact, but making sure that you're really asking what does it look like with this new rule change? How big is your roster going to be? How much financial aid is there going to be? You know, where do you see me genuinely making an impact in my freshman and sophomore year? And then basing your decisions off of those conversations.
You mentioned something that I hadn't actually thought about. You talked about extending your degree over that 5-year window, which is something that caught my attention. Because historically, this is something that a lot of I try to emphasize, because so many people miss this point, that certain degrees do not fit with a D1 lacrosse schedule.
Oh my gosh.
Because of that job. So does this now open up opportunities for some of those degrees if you start looking at a 5-year window?
I think it could. I really do. I think the pre-meds of the world, the engineers, you know, those really tough STEM majors where you're really in there and you can basically the girls you see doing those are the ones that go to the Hopkins of the world and the Ivy Leagues and things like that. So I do think it could create a possibility of that for future people.
That's where people would look at like the NESCACs or those high-level D3s, because they could do those type of degrees.
Exactly.
But that changes things drastically.
Totally.
All right. Yeah. The super interesting thoughts.
Yeah.
All right. Let's. You mentioned September 1st. There's been some big changes there as well. So let's dive into that. What has changed about the timing?
So really, it's just the shift from midnight to midday on September 1st, which I think is personally a lot better for coaches and for athletes. It's hard to kind of manage. I mean, I so remember at Hopkins watching my coaching staff the night before September 1st. They would be in the building on their computers, they're lining up, they have their spreadsheets on the big screens. I mean, it was crazy. So I think for them, just allowing them to get a night's rest and go home and make great calls midday, and then for athletes also to kind of stagger things and not be up from midnight to 4 a.m. balancing calls and scheduling things, I think is going to be great. So I think that's a great shift.
Right. I think it's beneficial. I mean, staying up till midnight is kind of crazy, and you might not get a call in midnight.
Also,
that happens, and that's really hard.
Yeah.
And to know that if you do not get the call, it's going to be okay. You'll eventually hear from somebody.
Exactly.
What should players be doing to get ready for September 1st? What is something that should be on their radar right now?
Yeah. I think the best thing an athlete can do for themselves is focusing on what do you actually want out of your college experience, lacrosse-wise, academically, and socially. And then coming up with, treat it like an interview, you know? When you are having conversations with these coaches, have a set 3 to 5 questions that are specific to the schools that you're interested in, and saying, what are these things that you really want to know from them? You can have I always try to get my girls to have 10-ish schools that they're really like, I would be super excited if I got a call from them. And then maybe 5 more that are just, oh, this would be cool. And then having 3 specific questions for the top schools for you, and then 3 general questions that you can basically rinse and repeat to any of these schools. They can be, general, what's student experience like, what does the schedule in season look like? And then you can have your specific questions for your top choices.
What is considered contact? Like what? Yeah, because people look at it different ways, but there are clear rules about what contact is.
Yes. So contact, quote unquote, is direct contact where the coach is saying, our interest level, can we have a direct one-on-one phone call or in-person conversation? The way that there are kind of loopholes around this where before September 1st, they're talking to other people, they can send out their camp information to kids, which is not a loophole, but it's one of the things that they're allowed to do before September 1st. Basically the only thing they're allowed to do. But then when September 1st hits, they're allowed to face-to-face. We want to talk to you about what your role would look like on this team, how much money we could give you, what your experience would look like here at our school, where you fall on our list of recruits and how much we're interested in you, things like that. So yeah, it's just direct and in person is also open. Yeah.
What should players be sending to coaches prior to that before they can actually have that official contact? What should players be, sending to coaches?
Yeah. They should be sending their emails out, and their emails should include, their name, their class, their jersey number, the club team that they play for, and then their schedule. You don't want to overload coaches. You want to, they're so busy. They have so much going on, but you want to send out that information before your major tournaments and not even necessarily before every tournament. Send them a good, this is where I'm going this summer. Obviously, it's player's choice, parents' choice if you want to send them before every single tournament, everything. But, it gets to a point where coaches I've seen your email 10 times, it's overloading my inbox. Also, I always remind girls to include head coaches and the assistants, because head coaches get a million emails. If their assistants are on there, usually the assistants are the ones that are really going through all of that information. So include the assistants. Don't just send it to the head or it might get lost. And then I always like to tell girls to include, if it's one of your top schools, include one thing that you love about the program and why you're interested. Give it a little extra pizzazz. They get so many of those emails. And then another thing before September 1st is girls need to be communicating with their club coaches, recruiting coordinators, or, the people that don't fall under their athlete umbrella, which is essentially parents and them. Who are you interested in? Where do you want to go? What are your interest level looking like academically and athletically, so that they can kind of help liaison that process when September 1st hits.
Okay. Now, as they're getting this stuff all ready, I think the important thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the coach can't respond to that email.
No.
So it is just going, it feels like it's going into a black hole.
Into the ether,
and are you going to hear anything back from these coaches or these assistants?
Yeah. You are not going to hear back, which feels so crazy, but they're not allowed to talk to you. They're not allowed to talk to you except to send you camp info, which is, I also tell girls to just stay level. Sometimes when a coach sends camp info, people get super excited. It's like, oh, they're interested, but it's the only thing they're really allowed to do. So just keep it level, stay calm, continue to focus on being a great player and a great teammate. But yeah, they cannot respond to you.
And does that camp invite mean that you're on their list as a potential?
This is where it can vary by program. I would say if you get the camp invite, it really depends. There's the form where you get the camp invite because you're literally on their emailing list because you sent them emails before and they have you as a 2028 that's eligible. So they send you the email. Then there's sometimes a more personalized, maybe you'll get a text message where it'll say, specifically your name, like, hey, Madison, we want to invite you to this camp. Maybe those might indicate a bit more interest, but honestly, that's the hard thing about it is you can't really tell until September 1st. And this is where people like your recruiting coordinator, your club coach, people like me can help to gauge that level of interest because they can talk to us about what they think about the athlete versus telling the athlete and the parent. So if you do have someone in your corner that's advocating for you, that's when you can ask, I'm really interested in this school. Do you have any contacts? Can you reach out and see if they're interested as well? So, yeah.
Very interesting. Tough. Yeah. It's kind of it's a little bit of a loophole with having that club coach or having that recruiting consultant helping you out in that process because they can answer some of your questions that otherwise you're sitting in the dark.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
So we hinted on this a little bit early, but let's talk a little bit about Division 3, because Division 3 falls into some different rules than D1 and D2. D1 and D2 tend to have the same rules, but D3 is a little bit of an outlier. When can D3 programs start like evaluating players? When and building their list, like their communication comes a lot earlier, doesn't it?
Yes. So D3, I like to call it the Wild Wild West. They can reach out pretty much anytime. So usually this will be when an athlete hits freshman year of high school, throughout freshman year, sophomore year. So they can reach out whenever they want. But a lot of programs, for the most part, will start reaching out, I believe, around the June 15th mark of their sophomore summer. Like they finish their sophomore year going into their sophomore summer, because that's usually when D2 also starts reaching out. So they kind of try to keep it aligned with that, because if you're reaching out to 8th graders, it's also a little crazy. So yeah, but it's crazy. They can reach out anytime. The major difference is that their official visits start January 1st of junior year versus D1 is September 1st of your junior year. So that's a bit different. And I think that kind of can help girls to figure out what was the interest level looking like from D1 programs. And then if that wasn't working out for them, they can kind of look ahead. Okay, what might a D3 look like for me, etc. So, yeah.
That's really interesting, and it's so much earlier.
I know.
And as we kind of talked about earlier, that the advantages historically with D3 is it's easier to be a multi-sport athlete if that's something you're interested in.
Yes.
You can do that. It's very I like to make it very clear. It is very hard to be a multi-sport athlete in a Division 1 program.
Oh my gosh!
And those that do it are
incredible.
It's insane. It's
insane,
crazy.
Yeah.
But with the 5-year rule, that could change a little bit, because you can actually have that. Well, education wise too, you can have those other majors. I keep going back to that because I think that's really interesting.
Really interesting.
On the D3 road, there's not athletic scholarships.
Yes.
So aid is a little bit different.
Yeah.
With especially there's more need-based merit and academic. So it's academic scholarships can be offered, which is really different.
Super. I love that, which is interesting because at Hopkins, I actually feel like I had a really unique perspective in this, because lacrosse is the only Division 1 sport at Hopkins and everything else is D3. So all my friends on the basketball team, the field hockey teams, track, they were D3 athletes that all got into Hopkins completely on their own and got whatever scholarships they got because they were so smart, which was super admirable. But I think it's really interesting the opportunity that provides athletes as well. You get to really choose the type of school that you want to go to, the major that you want to do, because your academics is the priority. Now at Hopkins, those programs were fantastic D3 programs. They were usually in the top, 10 for pretty much every sport. So athletics were also a huge priority, but it was really interesting to see how they were able to design their schedules and design what they really wanted to do academically because of that leeway. But yeah, you get those academic scholarships, so it's important to be a good student as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Because there are several schools out there that have either one D1 program and the rest of the school is D3. There's a small handful, and there can be with different sports. I know, like Middlebury, for example, has a D1 ski program. Wow. Everything else is D3. Everything else is D3, but they have some. They're known for having probably one of the best women's lacrosse teams in Division 3, straight across.
Totally.
And that creates this kind of interesting thing. And I'd be curious to know, and I don't know about other schools or if this happens, but did any of the lacrosse players at Hopkins, did they play other sports because they were D3, or was that still too much of a challenge?
When I was a freshman, there was a girl on our team that ran track also, which was super interesting. But after her, there was nobody else. Maybe now there is.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Also, track is surprising because it's the same season.
I know. It was crazy. I think she might have done, you know how I think for track they have their indoor season, which might be more fall focused. I don't know. It was crazy though. It was insane. I do remember she wasn't doing outdoor in our spring season because lacrosse is what she was there for in terms of the scholarship. So you have to prioritize it. But she did run track. It was crazy. Or cross country, something like that.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk verbal commitments for a second. Right? Because I think this is something that's really interesting. Historically, signing day was literally you signing a contract that you were going to attend school. Yes. Now signing day is just a thing that's, your high school or does to show that, who's going to what school, but you're not actually signing a contract anymore. And how does a verbal commit, because you see that more and more now that people make these verbal commitments and then next thing you know, they're going to a different school.
Yeah.
So how much value is there to the verbal commit?
I think it's still totally valuable. When girls verbally commit, you're saying you're going to go there. What becomes binding is that signing day. So senior year, once you sign the papers, then it becomes a whole issue if you did want to decommit or, anything like that. I have never actually seen what happens after the signing day, especially because it's so late in your senior year. Like it's usually things are wrapping up. So, but the verbal commitment's totally valuable. I mean, that's what they use to honor and to know who's in their recruiting classes, who's committed to their schools and things like that. But, because you didn't sign a legal contract, you didn't sign papers, you can decommit, you can choose to go to a different school. But definitely girls try to avoid that. And it's not a great experience, I would say, to have to decommit. But, some girls they needed a different type of school. They need a different process, and it's going to be better for them overall, which is totally awesome. But
is that something that ends up happening quite a bit? You see players that have committed, if they've committed to one school, and can you still be kind of like looking, or should you be very clear that I have verbally committed to this school? And yes, I am at your camp day. Right. How does that look?
Yeah, I would say you need to wait and be patient on your commitment until you're very sure that you really want to go to that school, because you definitely want to avoid decommitting. I would say the girls that do end up decommitting, it's usually because they've really, really thought about the fact that this is just not going to be the right fit for me. When I committed to this school, I was thinking totally differently. Usually it's the whole coaching staff has changed. That's what I've seen a lot from girls that have decommitted. It's like the entire coaching staff they were committed to is not even there anymore. So, you don't feel like it's going to be a fit for you anymore. And coaches make a huge impact on an athlete's experience. So definitely I wouldn't be, browsing around after you've committed. You need to be sure that you want to go there before you make that commitment. And only if it's literally last resort, you've racked your brain on the reasons why you just can't see yourself at that school anymore. It's not going to be good for you emotionally, mentally, then can start those conversations again with coaches. But obviously also with that, like it's such a hard subject, but want to be sure that you're talking to your club coaches, your recruiting coaches, you're talking to the school that you've committed to also, and being transparent, because you don't want anything shady. That's not the way you want to start off your college career. So, yeah.
And something that we've pointed out in previous, the lacrosse community is surprisingly small.
It's small. Yeah.
It is very small. All those
Yes.
coaches know each other.
Yes.
In good ways or bad ways. Some are not
Yes.
best friends, but they
true.
might be competitive, or they
Totally.
are really good friends. They
Yeah.
might be their former assistant coach is now the head coach at another school, and
Yep.
they know who you're recruiting,
Yep.
or who is committed.
Yeah.
That's on their charts. And so if they see
Totally.
that somebody is all of a sudden, sneak looking around,
Yeah.
they're going to be like, hey, what's the deal with your player here?
Totally.
So,
Totally. They will find out. So
yeah.
absolutely.
Now, you mentioned with coaches changing jobs, because that happens.
Yes.
It surprisingly, we saw that recently. Within the men's Virginia, surprisingly, huge change in the coaching staff there.
Mhm.
Tends to always happen at the end of the season. You might have already been talking to that coach when the head coach leaves or goes someplace else. Like, what should players do? Because that's who they've been communicating with.
Oh, yeah. It's so hard. I would hope that when those coaches leave, there's some sort of, if the girls want to talk about what has happened, there's some sort of open line of communication. But I do think if you haven't committed yet, you can reevaluate. But I also really try to tell girls in their recruiting process to commit to the school overall, because your coach can leave at any point in your career. I mean, my coaching staff left after my junior year, and we had an entire new coaching staff for my senior year at Hopkins, which was totally different and ended up being great for the program. But, you have to think about that. Did you want to go to Johns Hopkins, or did you want to go specifically because of these people and this and that? And obviously, like I said, the coaches play a huge part in experience and why you want to go to a school, but they can't be the sole reason that you're going somewhere, because things change all the time. So, yeah, I think girls can look, they can evaluate, but I would hope that if you have committed somewhere, it's because you love what your experience will be as a whole.
So with that, with evaluating the schools and kind of, because it's dating. You're dating. You're trying to figure out if you want to spend 4 or 5, now 5 years with this individual and have this type of connection with them.
Yes.
Don't get excited. How do you put it? Don't get excited because of the looks.
Right.
They have a really good name. They have a really cool colors.
Right.
Everybody knows who they are.
Yeah.
But is that really going to be the right fit for you? Right. And for players trying to evaluate, like, how do you dive into that essence of really get to know that coach? Like, what questions should you be asking, or what the players, like, if you're hanging out or you're doing an overnight or whatever, and you're like talking to the players, what type of things should you be asking them instead of just being starstruck, I guess?
Yeah. I actually have a great question list that I give girls when they're going to go on their official visits. But my advice would be to make sure that you're asking the questions that if your friend was sitting with you and they were, it's someone that's really knowing you. Like, ask things where it's like, what is the social experience like here? And, ask that to the team. I tend to give girls the advice to ask seniors, what was your true experience like with the coach and the coaching staff and your balance between social life and academics? Because usually the seniors are more willing to be open about what it was really like, because they're leaving, For the coaches, I love to have the girls ask questions about, what do the mental health resources look like here and this and that. And, you know, if a coach doesn't know, you know, it kind of clues you into, maybe that's not going to be a great environment for me. Or asking those questions about how do you build team culture and things like that. And really based on their responses, you can get to know what they care about and if it's a match with you. You can very quickly tell if they only care about the success of the lacrosse program or if they also care about your well-being as an individual, and being successful post-college. So yeah, those are great questions that I'd definitely ask you.
I like that. What's one mistake that you see kids make the most?
Oh, the biggest thing I see nowadays is burnout with going to 100 showcases, 100 tournaments for years. You know, I think nowadays there's a million things that you can attend based off of where you live and this and that. When I was getting recruited, there was not that many things, you know? So I think girls are so burnt out because they're going to literally 2 showcases a week and playing in a tournament on the weekends all summer long in the humidity on the East Coast. And it's crazy, especially for girls that don't live on the East Coast, you know, and you have to fly to all of these things. And it's just too much. Nowadays, I really recommend girls go to, you know, 2-3 max showcases that are really beneficial. There's a lot of showcases that honestly, in my conversations with college coaches, they don't really prefer, they don't think are super reputable, things like that. So, you know, there's a select group of those showcases that you should really be trying to get to, and then ball out in your tournaments. And then the college camps are important for sure. But again, it depends on how old you are. You know, when you're in 7th grade, you don't necessarily need to be going to 10 college camps every summer. I recommend, you know, for girls to do, you know, go and see colleges, go look and walk around, but you don't have to go there and be, I'm going to get recruited or they're going to see me and remember me in 3 years. You know, it's just, it's too much. The girls need to just relax, have a good summer, play hard and develop as a lacrosse player and a person. And then it works out later on. And that's, you know, what you need people like me to tell you. You need good coaches and recruiting coordinators to tell you those things because parents are just confused. They don't know what to do. So they are trying to give their girls the best options, but it's too much sometimes. So that's the biggest mistake I see.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Especially if you're coming from places like Colorado and flying to the East Coast.
Exactly.
It adds up.
Yes.
That's a lot of flight time. You're going to get your premier status pretty quickly.
Literally.
So.
Go have a pina colada at the beach or something, or at the lake, you know. You don't need to go to 100 things all summer.
All right. We have a couple rapid fire questions for you. We always love to add with some quick ones at the end here. What's one thing every rising junior should do before the contact date?
I think they should have a clear list of top 8 to 10 schools that they really want to hear from, and at least 3 questions for those schools.
One thing parents should stop doing during the recruiting process.
Oh my gosh. Only one thing? The biggest thing I'm going to say is taking over the process for your child. When your child goes to these camps, she goes to her official visits, she needs to be running the conversations. You are support. You are there to help refine her experience. Obviously, you care so much. You care so deeply. You're a great parent, but let your child run the process because it's her that they want to know. It's her that they want to have at their school. So don't force it upon her. You know, pushing is healthy. As a parent, structure is healthy, but let her really be the one that desires this for herself in her process.
Like that. What should an athlete do this week if no coaches are currently contacting or looking at them?
I would say, and they're past recruiting age, they're juniors, or are they sophomores before September 1st?
Let's say after September 1st.
Okay, after September 1st. Honestly, this is going to sound crazy, but take a break. Like, get off of IWLCA, get off of your phone, and go outside, play lacrosse for the fun of it. Have a good conversation with your friend that doesn't play lacrosse and don't talk about lacrosse, because I'm sure the next week there will be contact. And then if there isn't, we can talk through more things that we could be doing. But honestly, my biggest advice is just relax a little bit. Like, you're going to be okay if you're positioned well, you're on a good club, you're doing all the things that you needed to do previous. Sometimes it just takes a bit of time.
And what about somebody that's pre-September 1st and they
Pre-September
and they're looking at their thing and they're like, no coach has looked at my profile online?
Yeah. I would take a look at, what do you feel like you've done well this summer thus far? What do you feel like you need to improve on? And go have a one-on-one session on the field and start working on those things that you need to improve on. Whether that's a coach that has told you that information or stuff that you've observed from yourself, watching film, go choose 1 to 2 things that you really want to hone in on and be great at. And then also make a great highlight reel, 2-ish minutes that really showcases your best work. And make sure that your IWLCA account is updated with that reel and your information.
Perfect. Madison, before we let you go, what's one piece of advice you would give any young player who wants to compete in college but is feeling overwhelmed by the process already?
My biggest advice is that you are more than just a lacrosse player. You are a person with incredible talent and incredible interests and passions off of the field. And this process should be fun. Just like going on dates should be fun, You should just enjoy and just try to get excited about, who's gonna, what could it be next? Think about the best possible thing that could happen for you. And it will happen eventually. And just making sure that you're focused on more than just what you do on the field. You're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. You're going to have success and you'll end up at the right place for you. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks again, Madison McPherson, for joining us. Madison is the owner of MadMac Athletic Consulting, and you can follow her on Instagram. She has her personal account as well as her recruiting account. As always, thanks again for listening. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, comment, leave a review, and share the CLN podcast. Your support means so much to us and makes the whole thing possible. I'm your host, Asa McKee. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Colorado Lacrosse News Podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on social, and visit Colorado Lacrosse News for rankings, features, and full episode coverage.